Mr. Johnson for the hamburgers and our cheeseburgers.
Thanks, Jerry.
Who do you have up next, Mr. Parker?
Airport.
Airport. Okay. I think housing's after the airport.
It was before that, but they must switch.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Crawford.
That's okay.
I was looking for
That's okay.
Okay, go
Are you
ahead.
ready?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having us here today. It's a pleasure to present our budget for FY13. This is my favorite slide. I like to show people where we've come from, where we are today, and your latest addition is the new sign at the airport. And notice that does have your new logo on it. Our mission is to serve this area's needs for aviation. It's also commercial and general aviation and air cargo. And we do serve a market that is not specifically only Pensacola. It is from the Mobile Bay to the Destin Harbor. And there's over 1.8 million residents that we draw off of in South Alabama and Northwest Florida. We do have your most comprehensive flight schedule of anywhere along in the region. There are currently about 84 operations a day at the airport, or 84 arrivals and departures. This brings it into perspective about Pensacola International Airport. An airport can only be as successful as the amount of seats it has serving its market. As you can see, we serve about, we have as many seats coming out of our airport as our two neighboring airports combined virtually. That we've held pretty well consistent. There are times that the flight fluctuates or the schedule fluctuates. We may have one more flight at a certain time, or they may bring in a 757 instead of an MD-88, but basically our seats. And that was as of July of 2012. And we watch it very carefully. In fact, we were very pleased to know that we were up over July 2011 by 1 seat. Your passengers, again, it's a reflection. If your seats are there, the fares are there because of the operations and the competition. And we do serve about as many passengers if you were to take the two airports and combine them. Last year, you did see a fluctuation at our airport to our east, and that was because there was an airline in there for a few months. But that has been, when that airline left, you've seen a reduction in their passengers and their activity. Your airport is fully functioned and fully supported by the revenues that we generate at the airport. Our staffing remains somewhat consistent with last year. We do reflect on here our police department, but again, we pay 100% of the services associated with the police department and fire department, but you will actually see their numbers reflected in those two departments' presentations, the fire and the police. Our law enforcement presence is dictated to some degree by TSA requirements, Transportation Security Administration requirements, being able to respond to the checkpoint. Our fire department is a response or a reflection of our requirements by FAA. At any given moment, within 3 minutes of a signal, your fire department has to be at the centermost point of the airport, dispensing agent if there was an incident. They are not, their sole function is to be able to respond to aircraft incidents. If we were to have a fire at the airport, at the terminal building, we would be supported by the Langley, by the 9th Avenue, and also by the Summit fire departments. There is one other department in here that is virtually required, or to a great deal, by our 139, and well, there's every bit of our activity is a function of Part 139, which allows us to be a commercial airport and receive commercial aircraft. Very specific guidelines. Our grass can only be a certain height. We can only have so much of a grade change between our runways and our grassy areas next to it. We can only have so many lights out in a row, or we would have to issue a NOTAM, which is a notice to airmen. And then also operations, they do a daily check of our runways. There's several times during the day that they have to check it. They have to check it first thing in the morning. They have to check it after an incident, and they have to check in the evening. They also handle wildlife issues. And then FAA compliance, other FAA compliance issues.
How many coyotes do we have now?
Sir, we work very closely with USDA. They've actually completed a wildlife assessment. Now we're actually implementing their requirements. One of the things that will benefit us is, as you will see later on, the stormwater improvements that we're going to be doing, and that we're going to be doing some improvement to our pit. And I think that's going to help us to a great deal. There are still there. We try to keep them on property. The airport is very unique in that I will present this budget to you, and then in a few weeks I will present a similar budget to the airlines. And at that point in time, we will be in discussions. Normally the budget that I go back and we end up talking with the airlines is lower to some degree, only in that it helps us to operate with a little less with our landing fees. We come in and try to figure out additional ways to cut funding. This is where our revenues come from. Our agreement with our airline is that if we have a shortfall in any given year, that the airlines will make up that difference with the landing fees. If our aircraft traffic drops down on our commercial airlines, then it stands to reason that the cost per landing or the landing weight does go up. And so you have seen a significant increase in the landing fees at our airport in the last few years. Some of it is because of the way that the number of operations drop down. They understand that we have a budget, and at the end of the day, if there's a shortfall, then the landing fees make up that shortfall. We still remain competitive with our neighbors.
Can you clarify that line item? Just when you look at it in 2010, 656, almost 657.
Let me see if I can get back to that.
It's on page 180. And then actual was 1.2.
Yes, ma'am.
And
it's actually going to be higher this year than the 742,000. We
That's
did
what
a
I
rate
wanted to
adjustment last year at
Okay.
the end. Well, toward the very, I think it was in October, we did a rate adjustment.
so it's trending towards
It's trending higher this
900,
year,
or-
and it will be higher again next year.
So
And
over
also,
$1 million?
Yes,
Or-
ma'am.
Okay, so will it be more in line with what 11 ended up being?
Yes.
And then you mentioned that they fully expect that, but we're going up to 2.5 in the proposed budget. Is there a rate study that you associate with that, of the
We do
tolerance of the
a
airlines?
significant analysis. In 1988, when we did our bond issue in '88 to fund the original terminal project, we had to establish rates and charges, a calculation that is performed, and it's a very detailed. In fact, it requires us to use an outside consultant to establish these rates and charges. There is a trend upward. We had, after every major project, you see an increase or a spike in the landing fees, and you see it come down. If you were to look at an analysis, a historic analysis, you would have saw that the landing fees went up to $2 per 1,000 pounds in 2000. They went back down. We got them down as low as 50 cents a 1,000 pounds in 2008, but then the airlines cut seat capacity by 23%, so it's climbed upward. But after a project comes back on and goes online, you do see a trend upward in the landing fees, and then we work, because what will happen as more traffic comes in, more operations come in, the landing fees go down.
But we're still in line with being competitive with Mobile and
We
Fort
are
Walton
one of the
areas.
lowest ones along the area. The only one that would be slightly lower is is Fort Walton, because it's on a reservation, it's on a military, and they do not provide firefighting, or they don't maintain the runways. Because they only operate off of the property where their terminal buildings are. So they are slightly lower. They have actually been higher than us in the past when we got ours down to 50 cents. So it fluctuates.
And then you're counting on $1 million increase for the rental car customer facility charge?
And that's a customer facility charge. That actually pays the debt service and the operations of the rental car facility. It does offset some administrative and some activities associated with overseeing that. That's a reflection of two things: increased activity with the rental cars, and the other is that we have the ability to adjust if we see that there needs to be an adjustment with that area. Last year there was an adjustment because of utilities associated with it. We were able to accumulate about $3 million in that fund that we reduced the debt service on by paying a principal payment.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at, is that the rental facilities are
That's where that comes
to
from.
offset our expense, obviously, but it's not directly correlated to this landing fee number, that's strictly, it's calculated a different way, but it can help to reduce what you go back and ask
The
for, right?
only aspect, there is a piece of that service facility that comes out that helps to reimburse us for expenses incurred
Okay.
on behalf of that facility. But the remainder of it does go into a CFC account.
For debt service?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that's virtually just a breakdown, a snapshot of where most of our money does come from. You do see that parking represents 24% of our overall revenues. Those are the main programs that we have for our expenses. They reflect the same thing that we've had in the past. It's admin, maintenance, operations. We do call security now, and that does include the police department expenses. Our debt service, allocated overhead, and our grants and our other capital project assistance. Personnel basically remains in line. We have, in fact, reduced some of the aspects of our operation as far as staffing. If you were to go back to the 2009-2010 timeframe, we had we had 2 assistant director positions. They're not there. We've never filled them. We don't anticipate filling them until we're able to make sure that we can adequately support it with our rates and charges. We look very closely if there's a position that does become vacant because of attrition. We look at it very closely to see if it does need to be filled. Operating expenses to be this reflects a slight difference in the way that in the past we were able to record things. In the past, things such as some of our contracts where there was a revenue collection, like parking and all, we didn't actually take into the expense and offset it. We just reduced our revenue by it. We didn't actually show it as expense. So you will see some of that in here. We're trying to keep our utilities down. We did do a tending project in the terminal trying to reduce the utilities. We're doing utility shedding. We basically went from about a 174,000 square foot building in 2009 to a 240-something thousand square foot building, and we've had an adjustment. The airlines approved each and every aspect of it. They're aware of it. They have been coming in doing some adjustment. When we did this terminal project, remember there was no merger between Northwest and Delta. There was no merger between United and Continental. We're seeing some mergers where they're coming in. Basically, our dollar per square foot has to go up if they reduce less and they pay less. They have less leased area. But overall, we've been able to hold it consistent. Upcoming project. Next year, we're looking, and we're very, very happy about this. The hotel will go online in March of 2013. We do have the lease requires at least a minimum leasehold payment, but it can be the greater of a percentage of the room rental or a lease payment on the hotel. There are actually 6 parcels leased or have the ability to be leased. Not all 6 are fully leased yet. I believe right now the only thing that is in fact leased and moving forward is the hotel. But within 5 years of the time of the lease, which was 2011, they have to pay rent on the full 6 parcels, and at that point, the lease at its maximum will be $420,000 plus a percentage possibly of the room rates.
Could you refresh my memory on that? The Innisfree or whoever.
Sandspur.
Sandspur. I was thinking Larkspur, but is in charge of marketing that and such. And then are the lease rates already preset, or are they going to be negotiated with the airport once?
Your lease rates were set based on an appraisal, and they are for 5 years, and then they have to be adjusted after 5 years.
Okay. 5 years from.
But the date of beneficial occupancy is what I understand, but I'll go back and review it for you. That was a very detailed lease. There were some things that we had to make sure that we have in place. The only thing that we have not completed that has to be completed by the date of beneficial occupancy is the covered walkway from the garage over to the sidewalk adjacent to that hotel area. And we are planning on starting that in the fall of this year. And it will also serve as a covered walkway to the new surface parking lot that we're going to be installing. That's what it looks like. I stop by every day to take a picture of that thing.
Send it to our office.
I can. Your parking improvements, Council, you approved last week for the construction for that parking lot. We will be bringing back a contract for the landscaping and I think the lighting on it. But we're moving forward with it, and it has to be, that parking lot has 2 purposes that it serves. It helps us because there are times last year that we came very close to filling our entire parking lot up, and we don't really have an overflow area for parking. So that's going to provide that. But there are repairs that I need to do to the garage and the existing surface lot that I cannot do now because I have no place to displace parking. When this gets into operations, we'll be able to pull down certain areas of the parking lot and the garage and make our improvements. And then also, when we're able to secure funding, then we'll be able to use that parking lot when we're building the garage expansion. We will be looking at funding of parking lot improvements, that surface lot, and again, that covered walkway. And one of the aspects of the parking lot and the garage improvements, we are going to be replacing the lighting fixtures with LED fixtures. Just to give you an overview, our master plan was last updated in the 99-2000 time frame. We were looking at updating our master plan in 2008. We were asking for proposals, but we incurred a significant decline in passenger traffic in 2008 due to a reduction in seat capacity with the airlines. And it was just not a good time to go out to try to figure out where you're going to be at in 20 years when you lost 23% of your seats within 1 month. We've gained most of those seats back, but it still was not a good time. Right now we are working on a master plan, an RFQ for a master plan for engineering services. When that goes out and a firm is selected, we will be asking for FAA's assistance with funding that because it can be quite expensive. And they have to have a part in this process because that is actually our guiding documents that the FAA holds us accountable for.
And what is the largest equipment that this airport can hold?
You know, we routinely handle 757s. We can handle 47s. We've actually recently had a study done about larger aircraft and their weight restrictions with fuel and passengers. But airline right now, 757 is your larger ones and 747. But it would have some restrictions on lift with fuel. In August of 2013, if we are able to secure FAA funding to assist us with this project, we will start the master plan project, and it can take between 12 to 24 months because it does require significant involvement from the community, public meetings. It does require, if there's any projects that would possibly have an environmental assessment associated with it, there's a review of that. It's a very detailed and lengthy project, but at the end of the day, when the FAA accepts it, that becomes our guidance as the next 20-year planning document. Commerce Park. This has been a very unique project. We started it in 2004. It was identified in our 99 master plan, or 2000 master plan update, to acquire that property, and we've been working through the FDOT to acquire it. We are primarily focusing now from the air lane down as our phase 1, and then we're focusing on homeowners, interior homeowners, and we've been having public meetings with these individuals trying to make sure that they stay aware. You know, FDOT has assisted us with funding, but their funding fluctuates. It could be $1 million one year, it could be $400,000 one year. We are in discussions right now with them to assist with additional funding, trying to speed up this process, because these homeowners, virtually everyone in that area wants to be relocated. We do acquire homeowners and residents through Part 24, so we do pay for their relocation. That's also available to any business we choose to relocate. But as in the past, we bring each aspect of this to you prior to acquiring them. Everything that we do is contingent on your approval. If you, yes, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Crawford. Yeah, one thing I want us to keep in mind as we move forward with this airport commerce park is a situation that happened to me, and I'm real concerned about it because I've had a couple of people talk to me about this, and that's that the property owners that are left there as properties are acquired around them from the airport, their property in reality has already been taken without us taking it, because what happens is there becomes only one buyer for that property as they move forward. Everyone else knows that their property will be acquired by us eventually, and so that they're, if they wouldn't try to sell it, say to a doctor, to put a doctor's office there, a doctor's not going to be able to buy that piece of property because they're going to say eventually this property will be taken for this airport commerce park. So I can't make a capital outlay for equipment, et cetera, and make it financially feasible to do that. So what concerns me is, as we move forward, and I was actually a victim of this very situation, is that we've taken property without actually taking it, in a sense. And I think that we're leaving ourselves open for some legal issues, and that's why I hope that we can speed this process up. I just, I've had a couple of people talk to me about that, as I've spoken many times about eminent domain issues and property rights. I think that we have to be conscious of that, and I just hope that we can move these along as quick as we can. Again, these property owners that we don't own that property, they're just captive there. They're there, and we really need to try to move along with these acquisitions as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Councilman Johnson, I understand what you're saying, and we fully. The main thing that we've been working on is we understand that we are working in partnership with this community. I've actually had extensive discussions with DOT to see if they could help us speed up the funding mechanism on this. And I believe that the mayor is very aware of it and his staff, and they're also trying very diligently to help us get additional funding.
Well, one of the owners in that area, in that neighborhood, who also represents another large owner of property in that area, I think is already starting to make legal contact, or speak to attorneys about that. So I think that, we're leaving ourselves open for lawsuits, and I hope it doesn't go that way direction, but I can't share this with the rest of my council people unless it's publicly done. So I just think that we need to be very aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You mentioned you're looking at or trying to increase the rate, and so this has all been funded through the FAA?
No, FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation.
Okay, and what do we think the chances are that they will be able to come
It's
through?
very favorable.
Okay. And how,
We just keep going back to them and explaining the potential for this area. We were able to secure UPS, and I think that really works toward that they now see that we are viable for different activities, and it has brought to light that there is need to go ahead and acquire it, because quite frankly, we get contacted on a routine basis for not for this area, but for people to operate at different aspects and different function within the airport. And we just need to make sure that FDOT is aware of that.
and will you refresh my memory, how much they have provided us each year, and how much do we think it'll take to finish it?
I know that my estimates right now is that it would probably take about $16 million to acquire the rest of the property. They have been funding our project since 2004. They probably have about $9 million that they've committed through 2013.
So
It's about $1 million a year.
okay, and is this something that the airport is able to get bonding for to accelerate?
I would have to defer to Mr. Barker.
It does allow for the airport it's a bondable project. It's a question, as she's just mentioned, on the rates and charges, how much it would affect that, and then the overall of the airport. But yes, this project is bondable.
Just curious. Thank you.
Excuse me, if I could also mention one other thing. I look at the bottom of that map right there, and it looks like we have contiguous pieces of property there. So that to me would be very ripe for annexation. We talk about annexation, and that bottom part right there of the map there, I think that we could annex that into the city quickly and painlessly, since the airport owns that property. And
We do not own the ones in pink yet. We are in negotiations with the one in pink. You've already approved the ones in, two of the ones in orange. And we realize that as soon as those are acquired, we would look at annexation, anything that's contiguous to the airport.
right, and the other thought when I look at that, as I think of safety and police protection, et cetera, and people that live in that particular area, who do they call if they're one of the white pieces of property there that hasn't been acquired yet? I mean, if they have an issue there, some kind of public safety issue of safety there at their home, it can get very confusing too, and that becomes a concern of mine also.
We during all courses of our conversations with them, they are in the county. So we make it very clear that if there is a safety issue or if there is a law enforcement issue, they have to call the county. On a routine basis, our police officers go through there 2 to 3 times a day just to check on our properties. So there is a presence in there, but we are not, nor can we be responsible for actually law enforcement in that area.
I don't want to get off topic too far, but thank you very much.
Thank you. That was actually your estimate. And that does show how we're looking at phasing it. One of the big issues that has been facing any type of future development at the airport and existing development is that over the years, the airport's pit, which is off of Summit, has never, there has been issues with its permit. And because of those issues, we are required to put in retention ponds and detention ponds with every construction project that we undertake. in an effort to get to a point that we can fast-track development on our airport, we are going to be working through the city. In fact, you will probably see as one of the stormwater projects, the preliminary designs for this project. The water that drains into that pit come from as far away as Interstate 10 and all around that area. It serves as a major lifeblood for stormwater drainage for that whole area. And we're going to be working very diligently with DOT, the county, and again the city to secure and to permit that pit, to do any modifications that are required, and to be able to have that in hand so that we can fast track any permitting required for our property and then our development on the airport. And you can basically see the schedule. It would be, if everything plays through as far as being able to get the funding, we could have this project under construction in July of next year with a possible completion of the spring of 2014. And Southwest Airlines. They made a commitment to retain our airport as one of the Airtran stations on January the 20th. And at that point in time, they made no statements of when and if we would become a Southwest station. We are currently on our airline negotiations. We deal with the Southwest Properties people, but we are being serviced and continue to be serviced by the very good airline, Airtran Airways. And there were several airports. I would just like to make sure that everybody is mindful that there were several airports that lost Airtran. Newport News lost Airtran because of their proximity to North Fork. That was about 65 to 85% of their passengers. And so we were extremely fortunate that Southwest recognizes the strength of this market, and they recognize the loyalty that this market has had for Airtran. And they also understand that we're not in Panama City's market. We've been able to hold our own. We've been able to grow since Southwest entered Panama City. And I think that if everything, and I can sit here and tell you, but I think this probably speaks volumes. This is a publication that they send out to their employees, and they sent that publication out in spring of 2012 to their employees. And they recognize Pensacola as one of their stations. And so I think that probably speaks about, do I know when they're coming? No. Do I know what destinations they'll serve? No. And do we know the frequency? We don't. But I think that are some discussions that we're going to have. They are very impressed with our market, and they're impressed with this region. Yes, sir.
And I apologize for speaking so many times today, but concerning that very issue, Airtran, when will they totally convert all their Airtran airplanes to the Southwest flag? When will that total 100% completion of that happen?
That's a very difficult question to answer because the Southwest Airlines is typically a 737 fleet. Airtran has 717s. The majority of their fleet is 717s. Airtran, Southwest Airlines has just entered into an agreement with Delta, and they will be selling Delta their 717s, and they'll be phasing them out so many aircraft periodically. They said it could take up to 2 to 3 years to completely phase those 717s over to Delta. So I do not know the timeline. You might have Southwest here and you might have Airtran at some other station. You might see a Southwest and an Airtran running side by side. I have no idea.
So Southwest has not committed to totally doing away with the Airtran flag?
They will eventually do away with it. I'm just saying you could have a period of time where they would run side by side.
All right. Okay, and the other thing was we west of here, Biloxi Gulfport did lose their Airtran.
They did.
So, just that's real close. Of course, New Orleans has Southwest, but anyhow, thank you.
One of the things that we've seen across the area, and I can't tell you enough, that part of my job is to do outreach. And I go from the Mobile Bay over talking about this airport and how our market is. We've got a very strong market. Delta Airlines acquired Northwest, and they've reduced the activity of that hub since that acquisition. And I don't know what the end is going to look like for Memphis at the end when they get through with this transition. I don't know what it's going to look like. But we are one of the last airports along the Gulf Coast to have flights to Memphis, direct flights to Memphis. That flight will go away in the first part of August. We've had some increase of activity in Atlanta since they first acquired Northwest, but it speaks volumes that we've been able to not only support Northwest, but your planes coming out of your airport are about 95% full. And that really does speak volume about this market. We've also been able to support the Miami flights. We're up to 3 flights a day with Miami. We've got the Chicago. We've been doing very good. The DC flights, that was our #1 underserved market, and now we have both Reagan and Dulles. So if you could take anything away from it, just know that you have a strong market and it has reflected well in your airport. Questions?
I just want to make a statement. I should have done this after everybody's spoken so far, but I want to commend you for the fine job you've done.
Thank you, sir.
And I also want to go on record to say that a lot that's happened at the airport is the result of past work by different committees, especially the Enterprise Committee. And in that regard, I want to acknowledge Councilman Townsend, Councilman Johnson, Councilman Hall, and past Councilwoman Diane Mack, because I think they were all on the Enterprise Committee when a lot of the things we're talking about was first conceived and done. Matter of fact, I thought we were going to have to put Councilwoman Mack a cot at the airport. I think she came to visit you so much, which was a good thing. But I appreciate the fine job you did, and I just want to make sure these fine folks aren't forgotten as we move along.
And I was remiss in not saying this sooner. You truly have been the reason that that airport has been able to go through such a transition. If you could remember back to where we were 4 years ago, and then look at, we actually have people that come through that has not traveled through in 3 or 4 years, and they come through and they step back to look and see if they're in the right place. So every day you're getting comments about what a good first impression you've made for the community, and it would not have been possible if you had not allowed us to have our contracts with Green Hut Construction Company and for us to be able to move as fast and as quickly as we were able to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I was wondering about the advertising budget for the year. I think it was the port people who or I don't remember now, it's already a blur this morning, that the new ad agency is more expensive, and I see your advertising budget is not increased. Are you going to be advertising about the same rate this year, or will there be a change in your advertising?
Last year, you had an increase in our advertising budget due to an incentive for American.
Okay.
And so there's not an incentive built into this one. We would have to come back to you and ask for us to be able to move some type of monies around in order to be able to do that incentive. We don't have an incentive in this year. Our advertising, we have a flat budget for our normal operating, and it hasn't really increased. There might be a fixed fee, but we do not pay the commission for actual advertising. There is no commission. It's a fixed fee. So we believe that at the end of the day, it's going to pretty well wash.
Okay. Yeah, because I guess the understanding I got from the port was they sort of felt that this year the money they would be spending, a lot of it would be on developing the new ads and things, and so they were I'm looking at you having a flat budget, and if we're going to spend money on developing ads, then we're going to have a decrease in the actual ad.
Well, our primary advertising venue has been billboards. That's
Okay.
going to be pretty well consistent.
Okay.
And again, there's no commission, so that's actually probably going to be beneficial to us. We do TV, and the production, you would do 1 to 2 commercials, and the production would probably be $10,000 to $20,000 for production. So again, the monies that you're spending on a monthly fee, to a great deal, are going to be offset, and I think probably Ms. Mack will be able to tell you a little bit on this one. But the commission fees, they do not charge us commission, so it does offset it to some degree.
Okay, and just so I can keep it straight, the incentive for American is not reflected in our beginning budget from last year. Last year was 517. This year, our recommended budget is 520. Is that correct, or is that 517 with the...
The 517 is a little bit confusing also. That's not just our advertising. That's our advertising and marketing. There's not a real place to put that. So when we go out and we buy promotional items, if we're doing any type of promotional activity, like the Blue Wahoos, all of that goes into that advertising budget. What I was saying as far as basically, I believe the amount that we spent flat was about 300-something thousand on advertising.
Right, yeah. No,
And it's pretty well staying flat. We came in this year, in 2012, on the tail end of the American. So there were a few months. We already placed most of those ads at the end of 11.
Okay.
You just won't have, you saw some years where we had an $800,000 expenses, and that was when we got the United and the American all in the same 1 year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir?
Yes, thank you again. I was just wondering, I was looking at the parking lot numbers here, and I was wondering if this number would go up if we didn't allow contract employees to park out there for free.
Contract employees?
Yeah, is contract employees allowed to park at the airport for free?
Only those that are working there at the airport, because we have no other place to put them. If they're like a contractor or a vendor and they come in and service the airport, but other contracts are not allowed to park free at the airport.
So no one at the city hall that's a contract employee doesn't park free at the airport?
You have the ability to sign off on your parking tickets.
Mm-hmm.
There are a list, and I can provide you with a list of individuals that are able to sign off on that.
That'd be great if you could email that to the city council. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a couple housekeeping questions. And I think you touched on this before on page 181 because of the engineering RFQ that you're putting out, but I just wanted to be clear because it's pretty big changes. Airport administration is actually up 2.6 million, but then maintenance is down by 2. There's a difference of about $500,000 there. Is that where you were talking about the engineering portion being?
Yeah.
Why is it still that much higher though? It's 547,000.
What page are
different.
you looking at, ma'am?
Page 181, and it's airport administration and airport maintenance, so under program costs. And I caught what you were talking about earlier, and I understand from when we've discussed that about the engineering and maintenance. I don't know if they'd be an assistant director or what you'd actually call them, but that that's kind of been in flux for the last 2 years.
What page you on?
181.
181.
Yes, and it's under program name, third and fourth one down. Do you see what I'm talking about?
I do.
The increase and then the decrease, and I thought they're offsetting because of what you said, engineering, where you're allocating those expenses right now.
It's also in the past where we had, hold on just a moment before I tell you something.
Okay.
Michael, will you bring me a book?
And then while you're waiting on Michael, there was $800,000 increase in operating expense, and I'm sure that's just square footage that for the
It is.
expansion. And will you reduce that? I know you had utilities was a different section, but will that come down, or is that a permanent increase?
It's, nothing is a
operating.
permanent. We try to look for ways
So,
to
okay.
increase to.
Okay.
Just a moment.
And you can get back to me on it if
I
it's something
can.
you have to dig on.
I will
It's
look
just-
for it
yeah,
and I will
I
give it
can-
to you.
Yeah, so it's those 2 lines. And then the other things, just really quickly, were overtime. This is on page 186 for council members. Do you anticipate that going up from the 227,000? Last year was 320. I mean, is that a pretty consistent number for overtime expenses that you show?
The main overtime expenses we show are for the police and the fire.
Okay, and because fire, that's just contractual
Yes, it
because
is.
of their holiday pay
It's
being
their
overtime pay?
scheduling and their numbers, their automatic or their required overtime, and then police. Maintenance has some overtime, but it's pretty limited.
Okay. And then professional services went up by $250,000. Is that permanent as well, or is that some special?
I will give you
Study,
a break
rate study, or-
professional services. Hold
Yeah.
on, I can give you that one. Some of that is engineering
Okay.
for the various projects that we have. There are some professional services. We do have our airport consultant that handles our rates and charges.
Maroney?
Yes, and then also our air service development.
Okay.
We've got, outside legal fees are also in that area,
All right.
and that's probably where a significant amount is.
Okay, and then my only other question here is the next page, 187. There's a couple increases. Other contractual services, 427,000 increase. And then it appears to be a new accounting method, so maybe Mr. Barker has to talk about, under 9661 and 9665, land for 820,000 and machinery and equipment for 140.
Those are actually our capital projects, and according to our rates and our lease agreement with the airlines, we're able to retain 17.5% of non-airline revenues for capital projects. And we identified projects such as the matching funds for our FAA grant and our FDOT grant. And then the rest of it, we focused on that land acquisition program because we truly do
Okay.
want to escalate that.
So that's what that is. Okay, and then contractual services, did you answer that one?
Did you ask a question about 9135?
No.
You didn't have anything budgeted in 2010, you had some in 2011, nothing in 2012, now you have some 2013.
Councilman
Explain that
Townsend,
scenario.
that had to do with the reclassification, and you may see that in other department line items. When we prepared the 12 budget, the audit had not been completed for the FRS, and so we created line item 9135, which are the EPS employees, non-permanent employees that we pay through payroll, and we took them out of line item 9125. So if you look at those two line items together, you'll see that they're about the same, but that was a requirement we had so that they could distinguish easily which employees were paid through payroll and which employees were paid through the agencies that we talked about earlier today.
Okay.
On the contractual services, that we contract out parking
Okay.
for terminal area. Our traffic managers, the individuals that are out front directing traffic, that goes through our parking contract, except for we do have 2 city employees out there.
Okay.
Then on the terminal building, that's including our janitorial, our floor contract, our interior plants, our pest control. We also had in there for our security system. We have a contractor that oversees the maintenance and the repairs to our security system. And that, as our system, we put our system in 3 years ago, you'll see an increase in that.
Okay. Thank you. And I just wanted to say what a great job y'all have done at the airport. I'm so proud of what it looks like and how you take care of it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I wanted to say also that I'm so proud of you. I think you're doing a great job. I have a lot of confidence in you, and you present your presentations so well, and I just want to thank you for everything that you do. I just had a couple of questions. One was line item 9355 for agricultural supplies.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's gone up $40,000. Is that because you have more landscaping now, or?
No, ma'am. Actually, that is a result of that USDA did a wildlife hazard study for us, and they made some recommendations about additional herbiciding and additional spraying and things of that nature out on the airfield, different types of activity trying to reduce the birds and the other wildlife out on the airport through the application of some of those things.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask you, just one more question. Well, actually, one comment. I would like to know more about the lead lighting, because I think our Environmental Advisory Board needs to know every time we do something that's environmentally friendly, we're trying to do kind of an audit of that, because those are things that can get us points if we go for the Florida Green Building Coalition certificate. So anything that you're doing out there that's an environmental improvement, if you would let me know or let the chair of the Environmental Advisory Board know, that would be great, because we're trying to get that kind of information together, because it really helps us.
We just sent a listing of projects for the green report that was requested last week or 2 weeks ago. I'll forward that report over to you that shows you everything that we've done recently, including when you put in your rental car facility, we use reclaimed water for the landscaping, and then also we use recycled water for the car washes. So I'll send that all over to you.
And the EAB meets Wednesday, and if you can share that information with me before then, I'll make sure that they get it Wednesday. And just one other thing, under personnel, do you still have an attorney who works for the airport? I know that Mike Godwin used to be the attorney for the airport, and I think he left. Is he going to be replaced, or?
His position was actually properties within the properties department, and he did a lot of other things. He assisted with all of our the formulation of some of our documents, and then they would be reviewed by the city attorney's office. But we're not anticipating, due to scaling back, we're not anticipating replacing that position.
Okay, I was just wondering. I felt that he provided a really valuable service, and I assume that you have someone in there who is doing the same thing that he was doing. So.
Staff does prepare the documents, and then we have them reviewed by city attorney, or if there's an outside firm, we have them look at it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Ms. Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. President, may I ask Ms. Crawford a question? Thank you. Ms. Crawford, in the budget message on page XXXIII, otherwise known as 33, there is a sentence, costs associated with the oversight and planning of the Commerce Park are anticipated to increase by $312,000, and I wonder if you would give just a little detail of what is covered in that increase. Thank you.
A lot of that is also change in accounting practices. In the past, we had the individuals that were handling like our mini warehouse. Their salaries and their expenses were just a net of the revenue. Now they're actually broken out so that they're shown as an expense and then a reduction in the revenue. There's also the landscaping in those areas, and that's just not the Commerce Park, that's also some other buildings that are rented out.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you so very much.